welcome back to my channel. I am so excited about today's video because I am going to start a series about knitting, about how to start knitting, what you need, all that good stuff. Just imagine that you have someone to FaceTime to teach you how to do this stuff. I learned how to knit when I was about 10 years old. I kind of learned on YouTube. I learned from a friend too. It was a conglomeration of different things that taught me how to knit. But I wish I had have had someone who had like a whole series on how to shop for yarn, how to choose your needles, what needles do you need, what tools do you need and which ones are overrated, how to do the knit stitch, how to do the purl stitch, how do you know which one's which, what do they look like. We're not going to overcomplicate this. In a later video, I will tell you how to look at some luxury yarn, what to choose, how to gauge swatch, all that stuff. But for the sake of you learning how to knit, we're going to start with the basics and we're going to make sure that you come out of this video knowing how to knit. This is something that I feel like I had to learn on my own, which is not the most horrible thing, but it definitely can be a little discouraging at times, which is why I kind of set aside knitting from like age 12 to 20. And when I picked it back up, I kind of had to figure these things out. So I wish I'd have had someone to kind of like FaceTime with to tell me how to do these things. So let's talk about yarn. When you're first learning how to knit, you don't want anything too thin. You also don't want anything too fuzzy. You want something that you can see really well. You can see your mistakes. You want something that's going to kind of expose you because that's how you're going to learn. It might show you some wonky stitches and not hide them the best, but you can choose that yarn later down the road. But for the sake of learning how to knit, you definitely need something that's going to be very vulnerable, for a lack of a better word. So you're probably like, what does that leave me? What am I going to choose? I would definitely go to your local Michael's, go to your Hobby Lobby, just a local craft store, and pick something that says acrylic. I'm going to put some different types of yarn on the screen, and you can see some different brands that are carried nationwide. On most yarn packaging, there will be a little icon that looks like a ball of yarn, and it will have a number on it. You're going to look for something that says 4 or 5. Anything bigger than that is going to be a little bit too chunky, and I think might be a little bit discouraging. It's just, you can make a chunky hat out of it. I'm not a big fan of wearing chunky things, so if you're not a big fan of stuff like that, you definitely don't want to start with like a super chunky yarn. And pick a color that you want. Even though it's something you might not wear or use to begin with, you're just kind of learning, make sure it's fun. Okay, let's talk about knitting needles. I highly recommend wooden needles because they have just the perfect amount of tension just to keep your yarn on the needles. You don't want something that's going to make it slide off and pull your stitches off and who knows where they're going. I'm a little bit anti stainless steel needle at first. There's nothing wrong with this down the road, but in terms of where I started, I wish I had have started with wooden needles. I started with stainless steel and it was really discouraging. You could also use plastic, but there is a little bit less tension there. There are straight needles and circular needles. There's not a right and wrong answer to whether you should get circulars or straight ones to begin with. I started on straight needles. My mom, who's learning how to knit right now, started on circulars. I do think that you're going to end up using circulars down the road, so it's not a horrible idea. But in terms of finding a pair of wooden needles at your local craft store, you're more likely to find a pair of straight needles. So if that's all you can find, then you're good to go. If you can find circular needles in your size, try it out. Either one is fine. So I am going to put some different options on the screen. When you pick out your yarn, like I said, there will be an icon for the weight of your yarn, but there's also going to be a recommended size knitting needle on the back. It will usually say something like US 4 or 4 millimeters, something like that. I will insert a picture on where to find this, but this will tell you exactly what needle size you'll need, and it will be super smooth sailing from here because you know that you have the right yarn and the right needle. The first thing that we need to do is learn how to make a slip knot. A slip knot is a type of knot that is commonly used in knitting and crocheting, which is getting the first stitch on your needle before casting on, and it's kind of like an anchor. It's going to be a lot easier for you to cast on after your slip knot is on the needle because you have something that's like kind of foundational right there. So let's get into how to make a slip knot. Wrap it around 3 fingers on your left hand. Wrap it all the way around to the back. Take the yarn that's in your right hand and pull it through the loop on your left. You can even push it through with your middle finger. Pull that loop through, take the strand of yarn in your left hand and pull, take the loop in your right hand and pull, and that will make a slip knot. Now that you're a pro at making a slip knot, you are going to learn how to cast on. We are going to learn the long tail cast on method. This is a very common casting on method, and it will be very helpful to go ahead and get this one under your belt for patterns that you're going to make down the road, because you definitely will see this a lot more. So now we'll learn how to cast on. As you can see, there are 2 pieces of yarn hanging from your slip knot. You're going to take the top one and slide your thumb underneath that piece of yarn. You're kind of making a V shape with these 2 pieces of yarn. From this point on, we're going to label our yarn that is being held by our thumb as yarn A and our yarn that is being held by our pointer finger as yarn B. Twist the yarn and keep in the same position, but just twist our hand. You're going to take your needle and bring it underneath the bottom yarn on your thumb, across the top one on your thumb, and under the yarn on your pointer finger, and pull. Okay, the moment that you've been waiting for, we are going to learn how to knit, how to do the knit stitch. This is the stitch that you will always come back to. You will always be using variations of. This is the foundational stitch that you need to start knitting. If you learn this stitch, you can make something. So this is going to be a big moment for you, so stay tuned on how to do the knit stitch. As you can see here, we have 2 pieces of yarn hanging there. You are only going to be working with one. That is going to be the one that is attached to the ball of yarn. You're going to take your right needle from left to right in the front, stick your right needle in. Sometimes it might be a little tough. You're going to take your working yarn, wrap it under and around your right hand needle, pull the stitch on your left needle over the one on your right, and pull off the stitch on your left needle. You have just made a new stitch on your right hand needle. You will continue working across the stitches on the left hand needle using the technique that I just showed. Once you reach the end of your row, you will now take the needle that is in your right hand and transfer it to your left. You always want your left hand to be holding the unworked stitches and your right hand to have a blank needle when you're starting the next row. So I hope that you are just knitting away and working on that knit stitch. Next up for next week, we are going to learn how to purl and how to do the rib stitch. Ribbing is like what you find on the bottom and on the cuffs of sweaters, sometimes on the neckline as well. And it's a combination of knitting and purling. So get really good at that knit stitch because we're going to change it up next week with the purling. So thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below and I will be glad to help. See ya.